What happens when a devoted mother is called embarrassing by her own son at the family table? Her response, delivered in front of everyone, leaves the entire room stunned. Edith Miller stood in the kitchen, hands deep in flour, kneading dough for her famous cinnamon rolls. The house buzzed with energy, her husband, George, setting the table, her granddaughter Anna darting between the rooms, and voices echoing from the living room where the men argued over football. It was Sunday, and the whole Miller family had gathered for what Edith hoped would be a peaceful afternoon. She glanced at the clock. Her son, David, and his wife, Karen, would arrive any minute with their 2 teenage boys. Edith wiped her hands on her apron, pausing to survey the spread: roast beef, mashed potatoes, her famous green bean casserole, and of course, the rolls. Hosting these family gatherings had been Edith's joy for decades, ever since her children were small and the house rang with laughter and the chaos of youth. But lately, something had shifted. David had grown distant, quick to sigh or roll his eyes at his mother's stories. He brought a sharpness to the house that Edith didn't recognize from the boy she'd raised, the boy who used to race her to the car for Sunday school, who had once asked her for help with every science project. Now, he spoke to her with a polite impatience, as if enduring an obligation. The doorbell rang, and George hurried to answer it, Anna skipping close behind. David entered, carrying a store-bought cake and his phone, barely looking up as he greeted his parents. Karen smiled apologetically, ushering her sons, Matt and Josh, into the hallway. Edith reached out to hug David, who stiffened, accepting her embrace with all the enthusiasm of a handshake. The family filtered into the kitchen, and Edith tried to engage her grandsons in conversation. "Josh, are you still playing soccer?" she asked, dishing out lemonade. The boy shrugged, eyes glued to his phone. Matt grunted, and Karen apologized for their shyness, blaming teenage moods. David looked around, pursed his lips, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Mom, why do you always make such a big fuss with all this food? It's not like anyone eats as much as they used to. You really don't have to go overboard. It's kind of, well, embarrassing." The words hung in the air, souring the mood. Edith felt her face flush. She glanced at George, who opened his mouth to respond but thought better of it. Anna, only 8, frowned up at her uncle, then back at her grandmother. Edith forced a smile and carried the rolls to the table. "I just want everyone to feel welcome," she said quietly, placing the dish down with trembling hands. She tried to brush off the sting of David's remark, but her heart thudded uncomfortably. The other family members averted their eyes, and Karen attempted to change the subject, complimenting the table setting. Lunch was a careful dance around David's criticisms. He pointed out that the roast beef was a little dry, and questioned whether anyone really wanted green beans anymore. Edith tried to keep the conversation moving, asking about the boys' schoolwork, Karen's new job, George's garden. But each topic seemed to end with David redirecting the attention or making a joke at Edith's expense. After the meal, as Edith cleared plates, David followed her into the kitchen. He scrolled through his phone, sighing audibly. "Mom, next time just let us bring takeout. You don't have to play hostess like it's the 1950s. Honestly, it makes things awkward. It's embarrassing." Edith bit her tongue, her eyes stinging. She thought of every packed lunch, every birthday party she'd planned, every late night spent stitching Halloween costumes or staying up with a feverish child. Embarrassing. She turned away, composing herself, hands shaking as she stacked plates in the sink. When the family gathered in the living room for coffee and dessert, David launched into a story about old-fashioned parents who just don't get it, his eyes darting toward Edith. The laughter that followed felt like salt in a wound. George patted Edith's hand, whispering, "Ignore him, dear. He doesn't realize how lucky he is." But as the day wore on, and the house filled with chatter and clatter, Edith's embarrassment slowly hardened into something else, an ember of resolve she hadn't felt in years. She greeted each departing guest with her usual warmth, but inside, she began to take stock. The woman David dismissed so easily was not the one Edith knew herself to be. As the last car pulled away and the house fell quiet, Edith stood at the window, watching the taillights disappear. She wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and started clearing the table. Tomorrow, she promised herself, would be different. Monday morning arrived clear and bright, sunlight streaming across the kitchen floor as Edith tidied up the remnants of Sunday's gathering. She wiped counters and stacked dishes, her mind replaying David's remarks. Embarrassing. The word clung to her, heavier than the scent of yesterday's roast. She opened her old recipe book, the one with splattered pages and scribbled notes from decades past. The handwriting in the margins, her mother's, her sister's, even Anna's childish scrawl, reminded Edith of every holiday and milestone she'd helped bring to life. She flipped through the pages, each memory a quiet answer to David's criticism. She thought, maybe I am old-fashioned, but these recipes have held a family together for years. A knock at the back door interrupted her thoughts. It was Marian, her neighbor and confidant, holding a bouquet of fresh zinnias from her garden. "Just stopping by to check on you," Marian said, sensing the shadow in Edith's eyes. Edith poured coffee and the two women sat at the kitchen table, sun warming their faces. Marian listened as Edith quietly recounted David's words, her voice soft but steady. "He called me embarrassing, Marian. In front of everyone. Twice." Marian's lips pressed into a thin line. "You know what I think? He's lost touch with what matters. My son, too. It's like they forget who made their favorite memories possible." They sat together, sipping coffee, sharing stories of children grown and changed, until laughter chased away the heaviness. Marian insisted Edith come to the church sewing circle on Wednesday, just for the company and maybe a few laughs. Edith agreed, her spirits bolstered by the gentle solidarity of a true friend. Later, Edith drove to the grocery store, taking her time down each aisle. She bumped into Mrs. Alvarez, who asked after George and Anna, and then into Tom, the postman, who complimented her cinnamon rolls from Sunday. "My wife says you're the best cook in the neighborhood, Mrs. Miller. You should open a bakery." Edith smiled, the words soothing a sore spot. When she returned home, Anna was waiting on the front steps, a coloring book in her lap. "Grandma, will you help me with the rainbow?" Edith knelt beside her, helping pick the brightest crayons, the moment light and unhurried. Anna looked up, whispering, "I love your cooking. And your stories. Daddy just doesn't understand." Edith hugged her tightly. She wondered how children so small could see what grown men could not. That evening, George came in from the garden with a basket of tomatoes. He set them on the table and kissed Edith's cheek. "You know, Edie, I wouldn't trade your embarrassing feasts for anything. That boy's just got his priorities mixed up." They prepared dinner together, Edith's heart lighter for the first time in days. She wrote a letter to her sister in Ohio, describing the ups and downs of the family gathering, omitting David's harsh words but hinting at her frustration. After dinner, Edith pulled out her photo albums, spreading them across the table. She studied the pictures, David's graduation, Linda's wedding, Anna's first steps, moments she had shaped with her care, her food, her stories. Embarrassing? Maybe to him. But to everyone else, she was the heart of the family. That night, Edith climbed into bed, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. As she drifted to sleep, she resolved not to let David's words define her. Tomorrow would bring new chances to be herself, unapologetically, and she wouldn't hide from her own joy. Wednesday arrived, bright and breezy, and Edith dressed with care, a blue floral blouse, her favorite cardigan, and a strand of pearls Anna had once picked out for her at a church rummage sale. She brushed a few stray gray hairs from her forehead, straightened her shoulders, and told herself, "Today is for me." She arrived at the church hall just after 10. The sewing circle was already in full swing, needles flashing, laughter rippling across tables scattered with bolts of fabric and tins of cookies. Marian waved her over, making room beside her. "Edith," called Mrs. Jenkins, the oldest member of the group, "I need your eyes on this hem. You're the only one with the patience to fix my wobbly stitches." Edith knelt, studying the dress, offering gentle advice as the women around her traded stories of grandchildren and recipes. Someone passed a plate of lemon bars. Edith found herself laughing at a joke about mismatched socks, the warmth of community slowly stitching her back together. As they worked, Edith shared her recipe for green bean casserole. The group insisted she write it down, Mrs. Alvarez promising to try it at her daughter's birthday next week. Marian nudged her. "See, not everyone finds your cooking embarrassing, Edie." After the circle, the women lingered, chatting in the sunny churchyard. Edith told a story about the year she nearly set the Thanksgiving turkey on fire. Everyone howled with laughter, and even Mrs. Jenkins wiped away tears. It felt good to be herself, to be valued for her quirks and traditions. That afternoon, back home, Edith sorted through a stack of thank you cards from friends and neighbors, notes from the last bake sale, Anna's school fundraiser, the choir potluck. "No one else bakes like you, Mrs. Miller," read one, with a smiley face drawn by a neighbor's daughter. Edith placed them in her keepsake box, comforted by the physical proof that she mattered to so many. Anna burst in after school, cheeks pink, backpack askew. "Grandma, can we make cinnamon rolls tonight? I want to bring some for my teacher tomorrow." Edith agreed with a grin. Together, they measured flour, cracked eggs, and kneaded dough until their arms ached and their fingers were dusted white. Anna shaped the rolls with childish abandon, pressing raisins into smiley faces. As the rolls baked, Edith and Anna played a game of Guess That Spice, giggling as Anna wrinkled her nose at the smell of cloves. The kitchen filled with the sweet, buttery scent of cinnamon. Edith felt alive, anchored in the moment, unbothered by the memory of Sunday's remarks. That evening, David called. He sounded distracted, asking if Edith could watch the boys on Friday. "Karen and I have a work dinner. You know how hard it is to find a sitter," he said, almost apologetically. Edith agreed, but before hanging up, she said gently, "You know, David, the boys always eat more when they're happy. Sometimes it's the little things that make family special." David only grunted, changing the subject, but Edith heard a flicker of uncertainty in his voice. That night, as Anna drifted off to sleep with a warm cinnamon roll in hand, Edith sat by her window and watched the moon rise over the quiet street. She felt stronger, more like herself than she had in weeks. The world hadn't changed, but her sense of self had grown roots. She poured a cup of chamomile tea, wrote a note to Marion, "Thank you for today. I needed it more than I realized," and went to bed with a peaceful heart, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Friday afternoon brought clouds and a promise of rain. Edith moved through her house, tidying with brisk efficiency. She baked a double batch of chocolate chip cookies and set out bowls of fruit and popcorn. She fluffed the living room pillows, set board games on the coffee table, and tuned the radio to Anna's favorite station. The anticipation of seeing her grandsons, Matt and Josh, gave her an odd flutter of excitement and a small undercurrent of nerves. David arrived first, the boys trailing behind with half-hearted waves. "We won't be late," he said, glancing at his phone. Karen offered a grateful smile and a whispered apology for their rush. "They've been a handful this week." "Thank you, Edith." Edith assured her it was no trouble, then waved goodbye from the front porch. As the door closed, the house filled with the familiar sound of restless teenagers, feet thumping up the stairs, doors opening and shutting, the echo of music from a bedroom. Anna tried to coax her cousins into playing Monopoly. Matt groaned. "Bored already, Anna?" Josh put in his earbuds and scrolled through his phone. Edith took a breath. She knew this routine, grumpy kids, distracted by screens, reluctant to be present. But she refused to let it sour her evening. Instead, she set out cookies and called the kids down for snack time. Anna bounded into the kitchen, followed by Matt, who immediately helped himself to 3 cookies, and Josh, who only reluctantly removed his earbuds. "Grandma, did you really teach Dad how to make these?" Anna asked, licking chocolate from her fingers. Edith smiled, sharing an old story about David as a boy, sneaking dough when he thought no one was looking. Matt and Josh snickered. Matt muttered, "Dad never told us he could cook." "Figures." The kitchen brightened with laughter. Anna suggested a game of charades, and, surprisingly, Matt and Josh agreed, if only to prove they were better actors. For the next hour, the living room erupted in cheers and groans as the kids acted out animals, movie titles, and famous people. Even Josh, normally sullen, cracked a grin at Anna's over-the-top imitation of a penguin. Edith watched from her armchair, delighting in their joy. She snapped a photo with her phone, 3 grandchildren, faces lit with laughter, arm in arm on the living room floor. In that moment, she felt a surge of pride and affection. Embarrassing? Hardly. This was what family was supposed to feel like. When David and Karen returned, they found the kids sprawled on the couch, mid-story. Anna was animatedly retelling a charades round, Matt rolling his eyes, Josh still munching cookies. David looked genuinely surprised. "Everyone's having fun?" Karen glanced at Edith, eyes shining. "You have a magic touch, Edith. We can never get them to put down their phones at home." David started to say something, but Anna jumped up and hugged Edith. "Best night ever, Grandma." Matt and Josh, embarrassed by Anna's enthusiasm, only muttered quick thanks, but their smiles gave them away. As the family gathered their things, Edith handed Karen a container of cookies. "For tomorrow," she said. Karen squeezed her hand, whispering, "Thank you for tonight." "Truly." After they left, Edith stood in the quiet, feeling not empty, but full of warmth, full of proof that her way of caring brought people together. She texted Marion a photo from the evening, captioned, "Sometimes, the old ways work best." She made tea, curled up with a good book, and drifted to sleep, heart light and spirit unshaken. The next morning, Edith awoke to sunshine and a gentle sense of satisfaction from the night before. She lingered over her coffee, rereading Anna's thank you note left on the kitchen table. Scrawled in pink marker, it read, "Best Grandma ever. Can we do this every week?" Edith pressed the note to her heart before placing it among her collection of treasured mementos. Before she'd even finished breakfast, her phone buzzed with a message from Karen. "The boys won't stop talking about your game night and cookies. You worked some kind of miracle. Thank you so much." A wave of warmth spread through Edith. She typed back a quick reply, already thinking about what she might bake next time. Later that morning, Marion dropped by with fresh-baked scones and a wicked grin. "I heard from Mrs. Alvarez that your house was the place to be last night. Word gets around fast in this neighborhood." The two women settled on the porch, sunlight dappling through the leaves as they swapped stories about their grandchildren and, inevitably, their grown children's foibles. As they talked, Mrs. Jenkins strolled by with her dog and called out, "Edith, you should teach a class on how to get kids off their phones. The rest of us need the secret." Laughter rippled through the small group gathered on Edith's porch. Edith felt herself shining, her confidence rising with each friendly comment. After Marion left, Edith tidied the kitchen and made a list of ideas for the next family gathering: old-fashioned ice cream sundaes, a backyard scavenger hunt, a recipe swap. She felt inspired, not by a need to prove herself, but by the joy she found in making memories for others. By lunchtime, her phone rang again. This time, it was David. His tone was softer than usual. "Mom, I just wanted to say, thanks for last night. The boys actually talked to us at breakfast. I haven't seen them that happy in a while." Edith smiled, picturing her son as a young boy, gap-toothed and full of questions. "I'm glad, David. Sometimes a little silliness is what brings people together." There was a pause. "Maybe you could help us do a game night at our place next weekend?" David asked. Edith agreed, surprised but pleased. The rest of the day was a flurry of small, happy tasks: watering her garden, writing a card to her sister, helping Anna with a school project. In the afternoon, Marion returned with more neighbors for a spontaneous tea party on the porch. Edith's kitchen overflowed with laughter, clinking china, and the sweet smell of scones. As dusk settled, Edith sat in her favorite chair and reflected on how quickly things could change, not just others' perceptions, but her own sense of worth. She knew, more deeply than ever, that embarrassment was in the eye of the beholder. Her kindness, her creativity, her old-fashioned ways had ripple effects she never could have imagined. Before bed, Edith wrote in her journal, "I am not the embarrassment. I am the heart. And the heart, when shared, only grows stronger." She turned out the light with a small, secret smile, ready for whatever the next day would bring. The following week passed in a blur of cheerful activity. Edith threw herself into preparations for the upcoming game night at David and Karen's house, determined to bring her special touch without overshadowing her son. She wrote out a list of her most crowd-pleasing recipes and packed up her favorite board games, ones that had brought the Miller family together for decades. The afternoon of the gathering, Edith arrived early, arms laden with a casserole dish, a basket of homemade bread, and a tin of lemon bars. Karen met her at the door, relief on her face. "I'm so glad you're here, Edith. I had no idea what to plan." Together, they arranged snacks and set out the games, filling the house with warm, familiar scents. Matt and Josh wandered in, surprised to see their grandmother but not displeased. Anna soon joined, bustling around the living room with colored markers, making scorecards for each guest. David, hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets, hovered in the kitchen. "Just don't go overboard, Mom," he muttered, but there was less edge to his words this time. As the first guests, David's in-laws and a couple of neighbors, arrived, Edith greeted them with her trademark warmth. She noticed David watching her interactions, an odd mix of pride and embarrassment on his face. The energy of the house shifted, laughter flowed easily, children dashed in and out with snacks, and adults let their guard down as the games began. Edith's team triumphed at Pictionary, Karen and Anna dominated charades, and even Matt and Josh joined in, trying, and failing, to outsmart their grandmother at trivia. Each round brought cheers and friendly teasing, and the kitchen filled with stories about old family holidays, childhood blunders, and kitchen disasters that had ended in laughter. During dessert, David's father-in-law turned to Edith. "You've got a way with people, Mrs. Miller. Haven't seen this many smiles here in a long time." Even David cracked a genuine smile, clinking his glass with Edith's in a quiet, unspoken truce. After everyone left, Karen hugged Edith. "You saved the night. I don't know how you do it, but you make it all feel easy." As Edith packed up her dishes, David pulled her aside. "Mom, maybe I was a little hard on you. I guess I didn't realize how much these things matter. To all of us." Edith squeezed his hand, heart full. "It's never too late to make good memories, David." Back home, Edith sat on her porch under the stars, listening to the peaceful night. She felt her spirit steady and her confidence renewed. Her ways were not a relic, they were the glue holding the family together. She ended her day with a note in her journal. "Tradition is not embarrassment. It's a legacy, one worth passing on." Days after the successful game night, Edith's phone rang with a series of invitations and thank yous. Karen suggested a Sunday brunch at Edith's house, and Anna wanted to help her grandmother teach everyone how to bake real cinnamon rolls. Even Matt and Josh, to Edith's surprise, texted her photos from the party. Goofy faces, stacks of game cards, and a plate of her famous lemon bars almost gone. The Miller family gathered again that weekend, this time in Edith's warm, fragrant kitchen. She let Anna take the lead, guiding her through measuring, mixing, and kneading dough. Laughter bounced off the tiled walls as flour dusted every surface, and soon the entire family was involved. David reading instructions aloud, Karen mixing icing, even Matt and Josh competing to see who could roll the most perfect dough spiral. Edith watched her grown son loosen up, genuinely smiling as Anna, accidentally, sprinkled cinnamon everywhere. At brunch, the table was set with care: homemade bread, fruit preserves, scrambled eggs, and, of course, fresh-baked cinnamon rolls steaming in their dish. Conversation flowed more easily than it had in years. Stories from David and Linda's childhood tumbled out, some retold so often they felt like legend. Edith brought out a stack of old family photos, and even Matt seemed interested as he asked about a photo of his father with a gap-toothed grin. They laughed at childhood misadventures, marveling at how the simplest moments had become the most precious memories. As the meal wound down, Karen raised her glass. "To Grandma Edith, for teaching us that a full table is a happy table, and that there's no such thing as too much food or too many stories." The family echoed the toast, even David, who looked across the table at his mother with newfound respect. After everyone had eaten their fill and the kids had dispersed to the backyard, David lingered by the sink, drying dishes with Edith. "You know, Mom, I think we all needed this. I'm sorry for what I said last week. Maybe I've forgotten what really matters." Edith squeezed his arm, feeling a deep contentment. "We all get caught up in the world, David. But family's worth making a fuss over." The rest of the afternoon unfolded gently. Anna and her cousins organized a backyard game, Karen and Edith shared coffee on the porch, and the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light over a family that felt a little more whole than before. That evening, after everyone had left and the house had grown quiet again, Edith sat with her feet up, a plate of cinnamon rolls by her side and a heart full of peace. She wrote in her journal, "I am the keeper of tradition, the source of laughter, the heart of our home. I am not embarrassed, I am proud." Edith drifted to sleep that night, certain of her place in the family and the quiet strength that came from loving without apology. As autumn swept in, the Millers planned a large extended family dinner, an annual event that had, in recent years, become a source of anxiety for Edith. This year, however, she felt only anticipation. She spent the morning in a cheerful whirl, roasting chickens, whipping potatoes, and baking 3 different pies. Anna and Karen helped decorate the dining room with garlands of leaves, laughter spilling out the open windows. By late afternoon, the house was bustling. Edith's siblings arrived, her nephews and nieces filtered in, and the living room filled with coats, hugs, and the pleasant chaos of reunion. David moved through the crowd with his usual briskness, occasionally checking his phone, occasionally rolling his eyes at his mother's fuss. During dinner, conversation buzzed from one end of the table to the other, childhood stories, teasing jokes, and updates from every branch of the family tree. Edith beamed at her growing, noisy clan, happy for every moment. After dessert, Edith began clearing plates, only for David to loudly proclaim to the room, "Mom's at it again. Can't help but make a spectacle of herself in the kitchen. You know how she is. Sometimes I think she likes being the center of attention more than feeding us." The laughter that followed was uncomfortable, half-hearted, glancing. Edith felt the familiar sting but stood straight, a small smile forming. She set the plates down and walked to the center of the dining room. With every eye on her, she cleared her throat. "You're right, David. I do love making a fuss. Because fuss is another word for love in this house. Every embarrassing story, every messy kitchen, every recipe I make by heart, it's my way of keeping this family together." She looked around at the silent faces, then raised her voice just enough for all to hear. "If that's embarrassing, well, I suppose I've been embarrassing since the day you were born, David, and you turned out just fine." The room erupted into genuine laughter. Anna cheered, Karen applauded, even Matt and Josh gave their grandmother a standing ovation. Edith caught David's eye. He was blushing, his pride a bit bruised, but even he managed a sheepish grin. Later, as the guests departed and the house quieted, David found his mother alone in the kitchen. He took her hand and spoke softly, "You got me, Mom. I'm sorry. I forget how much you do for us, all of us." Edith smiled and squeezed his hand, her voice gentle but firm. "Next time you want to call me embarrassing, remember, it takes a little bit of embarrassment to make a memory worth keeping." That night, Edith sat with her feet up, surrounded by the remnants of celebration, crumbs on the table, empty plates stacked high, and the echo of family laughter lingering in every corner. She wrote in her journal, "The things we're ashamed of are often the things that hold us together. If love is a spectacle, let me always be the star of the show." And with that, Edith turned out the lights, proud and unafraid, her family's heart, her own best champion.